We're on my shooting range to do a video I've considered doing for a while, and that is why the subject is why I don't like rear disc brakes on a truck or a Jeep, especially one that's going to be used off-road. Now, a lot of people nowadays seem to assume that rear disc brakes are a major improvement. And I guess on a Corvette that's true. But on a Jeep or an off-road pickup truck, not so much. And here's why. First, I'll tell you why I'm doing this video right now. I've thought about doing it in the past, but I just watched a video of a Wrangler tumbling off of Black Bear Pass in Colorado. And it didn't go well for the passengers of the Jeep. And in studying how it happened and why it happened, and by the way, everybody on board survived. There were one person and 2 dogs on board the Jeep, and everybody survived. But the lady who was in the Jeep was severely injured. And anyway, the dogs survived. But in reading about what happened, the report said that the owner of the Jeep parked at one of the switchbacks and got out to help somebody in another vehicle make it through the switchback, guide them through the switchback. And he left it in gear, which I guess that means he shut down the engine, which I have to do anytime I stop. You can see my wheels are turned, and there's a good sized tree right here, so if it were to start rolling, it would hit that tree with the bumper. But anyway, he left it in gear and set the parking brake and got out. And it jumped out of gear, and the parking brake did not hold it, and it went over the edge. And so let's get into this a little bit as to why I don't like disc brakes on the rear of an off-road vehicle, or any truck really. For one thing, they're not necessary. You don't really gain anything in that type of vehicle by having disc brakes in the rear. In the front, yes, but not in the rear. And the problem is, when you have disc brakes in the rear, you don't have much of a parking brake. Now, I've seen some heavier duty trucks that usually they have a separate parking brake, like my 3500 HD Chevy. And by 3500 HD, I mean the older 1.5 ton version, the real HD. It has a drum brake on the back of the transmission, and a lot of heavy duty trucks do, or medium trucks, it's a better term. But light trucks generally don't. A few of them have in the past, but not anymore. So what happens is, when you have drum brakes in the back, you have that, it's a good sized drum brake usually, like, my CJ7, for example, has 11-inch drum brakes in the back. And I have a square body K3500, which actually it's the military version of a K3500, and it's got the full floater 14-volt in the rear, and it has drums, nice big hefty drums, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. But what happens when the factories switched over to disc brakes in the rear, they did one of two things. Either they included a mechanism for the parking brake to engage the disc brake, or they added a set of auxiliary drum brakes just for the parking brake. And those auxiliary drum brakes, they're pretty small, they're just rudimentary. and they don't do a very good job because they're just not big enough. But they're probably better than engaging the disc brakes as a parking brake, because that doesn't work well either. So bottom line is you end up with practically no parking brake. This Wrangler is like that. You cannot exert enough pressure to hold it in place, which I'm going to demonstrate in a minute. And I also have an F350 Super Duty 4-wheel drive Ford. It's the same way, and it's got a foot operated parking brake, but you cannot exert enough effort to make it stay in place on any kind of slope. And now if it uses the disc brake, you do the same thing that we used to do with the drum brakes on the back. Push down hard on the regular foot brake and hold it while you engage the parking brake, because that preloads it and gives it a better grip. But even doing that, it's not enough. And now to the story about my K3500, for lack of a better, it's actually a Cuck V M1008 Cuck V pickup truck. And so they call it a 5-quarter, but it's the same thing as a 1-ton K3500 4-wheel drive. And like I said, that has good sized drum brakes in the back. And what happened with that truck was I had set the parking brake and left it for a while, and it already had some rust in it because it came from Ohio, so where they salt the roads. And so the cables were kind of rusted inside, with the result being that on the left side, the drum brake, the parking brake locked up and did not release. And it only has a non-turbo 6.2 diesel, which doesn't have a whole lot of power. And it's an automatic transmission. But I tell you what, it had enough power to snap that heavy-duty axle shaft. And now that's some heavy parking brake. I ended up having to cut the cable to release it. But anyway, with that, and with my CJ7 and other Jeeps I've had that have the 11-inch rear drums, parking brake is not an issue. They work fine. But all that being said, let's demonstrate with this Wrangler. That was with the parking brake set as hard as I could get it. And I tried about 3 times to get it harder. In fact, I had to turn my hand backwards this way to pull it towards the passenger side so it would actually catch at the highest extent I could get it. But my F350 with the foot operated parking brake and rear discs is the same way. It will not hold it on a hill. I've got it in gear now, that's the only reason it's not rolling.